Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Dawn, also known as Dragon Rider, and in this video we are talking about some priest decks that could possibly be a thing after Alterac Valley launches. But just a quick reminder before we actually dive in, Blizzard has given me some bundles to give away, and one of those is on this channel. If you are interested in entering the giveaway for the bundle, don't forget to check the video over there where I explain how to enter and make sure that you enter that before the giveaway closes. Now, let's get into these pre-stacks. All right, now this first pre-stack is a Deathrattle Priest. I know it seems like a lot of people are pretty excited for Deathrattle Priest, and there's definitely some more Deathrattle support in this expansion. So let's talk about a couple of the key cards that I put in here, and then a couple of cards that I chose not to include and why. Of course, the gist of the deck is to have some Deathrattle minions that end up dying, some Deathrattle minions. For this deck, I stuck with actually some of the bigger Deathrattle minions and not really small Deathrattles, basically 5 or higher cost Deathrattles, because when you bring those back with something like the Amulet of Undying, you definitely want to be getting value from that with the Deathrattle minions that you're resummoning. One of the new cards here, Spirit Guide, 5 mana, 5/5 taunt, and the Deathrattle is going to draw some cards. Seems like a good deal. You're getting a Holy Spell and a Shadow Spell, so I definitely included a couple of different Holy Spells and Shadow Spells. I put in Talon Forging just to be able to continue drawing those Deathrattle minions. The bulk of the minions are with Light Shower Elemental and Undying Disciple at this 6 mana, just creating some value here, putting up taunt, healing with the Light Shower Elemental, or being able to deal damage to your opponent's board with the Undying Disciple. I really actually like this Undying Disciple a lot. This might be one of my favorite cards, especially for Priest, maybe one of my favorite cards from the new set. And then for just even bigger Deathrattle minions, I also really want to try out this Humongous Owl and the Moarg Forge Fiend. Again, just taunt, give yourself some armor. This is really going to be quite annoying for more aggressive decks or decks that are trying to push damage from the board. And then I wanted to include the Xyrella new hero card. Of course, the Battle Cry is going to trigger friendly death rattles, quite a few here. That is another reason why I wanted to keep it to some of these bigger death rattles, more valuable death rattles. I feel like there was an option for maybe going for a route of trying to capitalize on the shadowed spirits to deal 3 damage and have that repeat resummoning those. And I think that's one different direction that Deathrattle Priest could take, is going more for a lot of repetitive damage with something like that. But for this one, I went more of a bigger Deathrattle style. Now, a couple of cards that I considered including, but I did not end up putting in this initial list. One, Call of the Grave. This card really hasn't been seeing play, but I personally actually really like this card. I think the Call of the Grave is a really cool design. I would love to see this card get utilized a little bit more. And when I was first starting to build the deck, I actually did include it, and then I decided, you know what, never mind, I'm not going to put this in the deck. Mostly because, again, when I'm trying to stick with that more specific pool of minions for the Death Rattle, I didn't want to be discovering something that I didn't want in there. So if I got a kind of poor option for Death Rattles, I would have to pick one that could potentially kind of mess up the Death Rattles that I would be wanting to bring back with Amulet or use from the Xyrella Battle Cry. So I ultimately just decided against it. And the other card that I thought about including is Holy Smite. Not a flashy card, but it's another holy spell, and it can act as removal for some early or possibly mid-game minions, especially against things like Quest Warrior. So I did consider that. Then I ended up ultimately deciding that the kind of removal options that I already had in the deck, with things like some healing and Xyrella, plus just having a lot of taunt minions, was at least a good enough start, so I decided against the Holy Smite. And jumping in to the other deck here, I'm calling this Buff Priest. I'm not really sure what I want to call it, but Stats Priest maybe, I don't know. But this is a list that I think is just really interesting that I wanted to put together. It is fairly low curve. If you look at it, yeah, there's a 6 cost and 8 cost, but ultimately the 8 cost Power Word Fortitude probably never going to be actually casted for 8 mana. It's always going to cost less than that. Really, the deck kind of tops out at 6. I really like the idea of trying to take advantage of buffing minions, buffing their health, and working with a couple of different combos. So let me talk about the kind of interesting specific combo that I'm looking at, and that is with these 2 cards specifically. Shadow Word Devour and Bless. Bless isn't quite the same as some big damage we've had in the past with Priest. I feel like there is definitely some potential with this. It's only going to cost 3 mana to pull this off. You do have to have a minion and ideally multiple minions on the board, or your opponent have some minions for that Shadow Word Devour to steal health from other minions on the board. Let's say there's even 6 minions on the board, you're going to get 5 health onto a minion, and then you play the Bless, add another 2 health, and then all of a sudden you're adding 7 attack plus whatever attack the minion had before on top of that. And that can create some huge minions to be able to swing face with. Of course, the rest of the deck is going off of trying to buff, add health. You have things like the Dragon Maw Overseer, the new Stormpike Aid Station to again keep bolstering the health of minions. Now, I'm not quite sure how this deck is going to actually work in practice, or if it's really going to be able to stay on board enough or pull off a combo like the Devour Bless combo that I talked about. I really want to try this one and see if there is some sort of board-based priest, maybe slightly more aggressive priest. This isn't quite as aggressive as like Shadow Priest that we've seen before in the past, but slightly more aggressive than just kind of sitting back and being very reserved with your plays. So I'm really interested to see how this goes. Now, a couple of cards that I considered putting in here, but ended up not including, one of them is Focused Will. And again, that just focuses on adding that health. If you use Focused Will first on one of your minions, then add even more health and use that Bless. That could be a fairly easy way to add a lot more damage. So I thought about that one. It's also another cheap spell, so it's not going to cost a lot of mana per se to pull off that kind of combo. Another one I considered is Fairground Fool. It's a fairly high health minion if you're able to corrupt it, which it only costs 3, so it should be fairly easy to corrupt. But looking at the way that I built the deck, again, it tops out at 6, and then there's the Light Steeds at 4. It actually felt like I might not be able to corrupt it as often as I wanted to, but if there were a little bit more higher cost cards in the deck, then I actually probably would play the Fairground Fool in the deck. But ultimately, again, because I didn't feel like I had quite enough cards in the deck to actually corrupt it, then I decided against it. And a couple other cards that I considered for, again, continuing with that buff synergy is Psyche Split and this new card, Stormpike Quartermaster. Now, I felt like there's actually enough spells and some cheap spells in the deck, plus enough minions, that you might be able to get value off of the Stormpike Quartermaster, but it still felt like it was a little bit slow, just relying on those things in hand instead of being able to play the minions out and then being able to like heal them up. And the Psyche Split just felt a little bit heavy for the way I had built the deck, so it felt a little slow. This one might be okay because being able to get an extra copy of something plus that added health does seem fairly good, but I am potentially looking at discovering a copy of this. The spot that I actually think this would fit in is maybe taking Gift of Luminance out of the deck, just because the copy you get from Gift of the Luminance being a 1/1 isn't really great for this kind of buff synergy that I'm going for, whereas creating a copy that is then buffed off of the Psyche Split would feel a little bit better. But again, I went for the mana cost there and not necessarily the copy value. Thank you so much for sticking through this video. If you enjoyed that, definitely would love to have you subscribe, thumbs up so that other people can enjoy this video as well. Is there a different priest list that you're looking forward to trying? Let me know in those comments below. And if you're looking for even more tips, tricks, deck guides, and other content, please check out the other videos and playlists that I have set up here.